Coming up on the program today, U.S. President Joe Biden says about 100 nations back a pledge to slash methane emissions. President Muhammadu Buhari says Nigeria is committed to net zero carbon emissions. Plus, Nigerians stranded in the United Arab Emirates over the work permit ban. Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. We begin in Glasgow, Scotland, where President Joe Biden of the United States says about 100 nations have pledged to cut emissions of methane as part of efforts to contain global warming. The number, he said, was up from 9 nations that had signed on as of September. The United States, the world's second largest greenhouse emitter, is seeking to reclaim leadership on the world stage by demonstrating tangible steps to curbing emissions at home.
We're proposing 2 new rules. One through our Environmental Protection Agency that's going to reduce methane losses. Look, I'm going to be very brave. So together, we're committing to collectively reduce our methane by 30% by 2030. And I think we could probably go beyond that. We just announced this package at the General Assembly back in September. At the time, as mentioned, 9 countries had signed on. Today, it's over 80. It's approaching 100 countries that are signing on. We're proposing 2 new rules. One through our Environmental Protection Agency that's going to reduce methane losses from new and existing oil and gas pipelines. And one through the Department of Transportation to reduce wasteful and potential dangerous leaks from natural gas pipelines. They have authority over that area. And this is all part of our new methane strategy, which focuses on reducing the largest source of methane emissions while putting thousands of skilled workers on the job all across the United States, and I expect in your countries as well.
Meanwhile, leaders of developing nations have called on their richer counterparts to halt rising global temperatures and release billions in climate financing. Costa Rica's Carlos Quesada said leaders are not delivering on their promises, while Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo said wealthy nations had failed to provide developing countries with promised climate financing and share technologies that could help them adapt to climate change.
Frankly speaking, there is no dignity to a slow and painful death. You might as well bomb our islands instead of making us suffer only to witness our slow and fateful demise. Leaders of the G20, we are drowning, and our only hope is the life ring you are holding.
If the world was a private company, imagine that for a minute, and the leaders of the world were to be the different CEOs of the corporations, today we will all be fired, out of business. Why? Because we are off track. We are not delivering results.
We're naturally very disappointed by the failure of the wealthy nations to honor their commitments of making available $100 billion annually to the poorer countries to assist us in the fight against climate change, and by the unavailability of the technology transfer that will help us find sustainable ways of charting a path out of this existential crisis. Those same nations are, however, insisting that we abandon the opportunity for rapid development of our economies. That would be tantamount to enshrining in the global community inequality of the highest order, a totally unacceptable conclusion.
Well, 100 seems to be the magic number at COP26, as 100 global leaders have also pledged to halt and reverse deforestation and land degradation by the end of the decade, underpinned by $19 billion in public and private funds to invest in protecting and restoring forests. Made in a joint statement issued later Monday, the promise at the COP26 talks is backed by leaders of countries including Brazil, Indonesia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, which collectively account for 80% 85% of the world's forests. The Glasgow leaders' declaration on forest and land use will cover forests totaling more than 13 million square miles, according to a statement released by the UK Prime Minister's office on behalf of the leaders.
My take on the commitment to end deforestation is that the world leaders have to commit to these claims and they have to follow through, because we haven't seen any follow through. It's been years of committing to ending emissions by 2050, and now we see that India is pushing for 2070.
We absolutely need to get down on the ground and work with indigenous peoples and local communities, take account of their needs and connect the dots, because one of the reasons why people cut down trees is simply because they need a livelihood. So we have to look at this through a livelihoods perspective at least as much as to an environmental perspective.
Well, it's great that they actually agreed on that. I mean, it's a big step forward, but I think it's a bit problematic that it's in 10 years. We need action now.
Among the many pledges being made at Glasgow is one from Nigeria's President, Muhammadu Buhari, who announced Nigeria's commitment to net zero carbon emissions by 2060. President Buhari also highlighted the devastating impact of climate change in the Lake Chad region and in northern Nigeria. He says officials are working to ensure a more stable energy market and have developed a detailed energy transition plan and roadmap that says attaining the global climate goal would require financial support to developing countries.
I do not think anyone in Nigeria needs persuading of the need for urgent action on the environment. Desertification in the north, floods in the center, pollution and erosion on the coast are enough evidence. For Nigeria, climate change is not about the perils of tomorrow, but what is happening today. Nigeria is committed to net zero by 2060. In our lifetime, Lake Chad has gone from a vast expanse of biodiversity to a shadow of itself. We are investing in renewables, hydro dams, and solar projects. Nigeria is not looking to make the same mistakes that have been repeated for decades by others. We are looking for partners in innovation, technology, and finance to make cleaner and more efficient use of all available resources to help make for a more stable transition in energy markets. The revised nationally determined contribution has additional priority sectors: water and waste, nature-based solutions, adaptation and resilience, vulnerability assessment, and a clean cooking, gender, and green jobs assessment, bottom-up renewable energy transition pathway to 2030. Parties to the Paris Agreement are expected to transit from fossil fuel to clean energy and reach a net zero ambition for greenhouse gases emission.
President Muhammadu Buhari of Nigeria. Now, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos is putting his money where his mouth is in helping to restore nature. The billionaire businessman made his own pledge at COP26 to give $2 billion towards the project. The money will be coming from the Bezos Earth Fund and will go into restoring landscapes and transforming food systems.
I was told that seeing the Earth from space changes the lens through which you view the world. But I was not prepared for just how much that would be true. Looking back at Earth from up there, the atmosphere seems so thin, the world so finite and so fragile. Now, in this critical year, and what we all know is the decisive decade, We must all stand together to protect our world. And today, I'm pleased to announce a $2 billion pledge allocated directly to restoring nature and transforming food systems. This is part of the Bezos Earth Fund's $10 billion commitment to fight climate change, enhance nature, and advance environmental justice and economic opportunity. Together, this $3 billion in pledges will drive a new threefold nature agenda for the Bezos Earth Fund, focused simultaneously on conservation, restoration, and food transformation.
We'll have more on the discussions at Glasgow. But here in Nigeria, well, recovery is still going on. Rescue operations continuing at the site of a 21-building collapse in Ikoyi, part of Lagos. It's day 2 since this happened, and a combined team of the National Emergency Management Agency and the Lagos State Emergency Management Agency are working to recover bodies and survivors. It may take some time, though, to identify the actual cause of the collapse, but our next report highlights how some of the things we know so far about the incident.
High-rise buildings like these ones, being built by 4 homes, comprising 3 blocks of multi-story buildings, are a common sight in highbrow Ikoyi. While some are completed and are already occupied, some others are still under construction. Considering the location of these buildings, not many would exercise any fear about the quality of the buildings. Surprisingly, however, one of the buildings, a 21-story, caved in broad daylight, causing chaos, confusion and anxiety among the residents. Shortly after the collapse, with many people still trapped under the rubble, fire trucks and excavators were deployed in the rescue process. Discussions soon moved to the factors responsible for the collapse. The Lagos State Deputy Governor, who was one of the early callers at the site, announced that although the contractors got approval for a 21-story building, the quality of materials was compromised. An expert in the industry also weighs in on the collapse.
Now what is happening? I'll tell you just a little history, because the government has a big fault to this. In 1986, a national building code was drafted by all the professional bodies in the construction industry, the 7 of them. This national building code was not signed until 20 years after it is drafted by the then minister Mimiko. We're in 2021 today, 15 years after the national building code has not been passed by the National Assembly.
As rescue efforts continue, many will be hoping that the government will bring to book those responsible for this latest collapse. Hopefully, that will send a strong warning to anyone undertaking such exercise in the future.
Channels Television is closely following developments at the site of the Ikoyi building collapse. We'll bring you details as soon as we have them. We have our correspondents on the ground. But still ahead on the program, more on climate change, plus a mother's joy over the separation of her conjoined twins in Turkey. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. Just to recap what's been going on at COP26 in Glasgow this morning, President Muhammadu Buhari committing Nigeria to net zero carbon emissions by 2060. Leaders of developing nations calling on richer counterparts to halt rising global temperatures and release billions in climate financing. And the U.S. President Joe Biden saying about 100 nations have pledged to cut emissions of methane as part of efforts to contain global warming. Jeff Bezos, of course, pledging $2 billion to restore nature. Joining me now is climate change expert Dr. John Osonwa in Abuja. He's been closely following the meetings in Glasgow. Dr. Osonwa, thank you for joining me on the program. Let's begin with President Muhammadu Buhari's announcement that Nigeria is committing to net zero carbon emissions by 2060. What do you think that would mean in clear terms?
Well, I'm happy to say that he has been showing leadership by going to these conferences, submitting Nigeria's contribution pledges, and also participating in global agreements. But when you say you want to achieve net zero emissions, you have to make some radical changes. You have to make some radical changes to your energy mix. It means we have to transition away from oil and gas. We need to move to renewables. It means we need to address our gas flaring challenge. Right now, we're still flaring 85 million standard cubic feet of gas within a 6-month period, wasting about 250 billion naira in gas flared that we're not using. So we need to make some radical transitions. We are now finding out that the gas that we are flaring, which is just being wasted, you can use it to provide electricity for Nigeria, and we have an energy shortage here. So there's going to be, we need to transition away from coal. We need to bring in more solar energy, more hydropower. It's a big challenge to say you want to achieve net zero by 2060. We need to curtail our deforestation. Right now, we are deforesting at a very rapid pace. We've already lost 50% of our forest cover since independence. You have desertification eating away the vegetation in the northern part of the country. We need to do something drastic about that at a large scale.
Yeah, and so much to be done. And then 100 nations pledging to cut emissions of methane, which is one form of energy that's used in so many ways, in cooking gas and in all of that. This is just to curb global warming. What other options are there out there in place of methane?
Well, the methane gas accounts for about half of global warming right now. It's a very potent gas, about 23 times more potent than carbon dioxide. In terms of volume, we don't put out as much, but the impact is huge because of its power, packs a powerful punch. So what we are saying now is, when you look at, again, gas flaring, one of the byproducts of gas flaring is methane. You look at also the animal husbandry sector. Some of the methane comes from cows, flatulence. So when we address this issue, we're going to drastically reduce global warming and climate change. And that's where we need to focus on right now. How do we reduce global carbon emissions? Every year now, we're putting out 30 billion pounds of carbon dioxide, which is causing the climate to heat up, making it difficult for us to deal with flooding
What are the
and
alternatives?
other issues. So
what are the alternatives?
We need to focus on methane.
Yeah, what are the alternatives in place of methane?
The alternative, of course, we are using natural gas. Natural gas is a beautiful alternative because you can domesticate it. You see, we're having a gas crisis in Nigeria, cooking gas crisis. We can harness the gas that we're flaring to be used for domestic purposes. So that's one alternative. Of course, the other alternative is to switch to electric vehicles. Most of our vehicles in Nigeria are still running on petrol. Toyota and some of the other companies have pledged that in the next 20 years, about 50% of their vehicles will be electric. because the world is transitioning away from petrol and diesel vehicles. So those are some of the things that we need to do. The other thing that we need to do that is very critical in Nigeria, we need to provide enough power for everyone, because the fact that we have a deficit, Nigeria should have about 200,000 megawatts of power output. We only have about 5,000. So that puts pressure on people to buy generators. 60 million generators in Nigeria. That is a major cause of climate change pollution. So we need to look at that. If we say we want to achieve emission neutrality by 2060, we have to get really, really serious.
Indeed, we do, Dr. Jonas. So we could go on and on. The meetings continue even tomorrow. I hope you'll join us. Thank you again for being here today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Now, it's been 4 months since Nigerians living and working in the United Arab Emirates have been in limbo over their work permits following what is believed to be a ban. Frustration is beginning to creep in some other parts, on the part of some Nigerians, a group of which have paid a visit to the Nigerian embassy in the UAE over the issue. Our correspondent in Dubai, Mayowa Adegoke, tells us more.
It's been 4 months since Nigerian workers in the UAE began reporting denial of work permits by the UAE Labour Authority.
It's a difficult time for us here now. A lot of people cannot pay for their accommodation again. People are sleeping on the street and the park. We have cases of people sleeping in uncompleted buildings too. We can no more send upkeep to our aged parents back home. We have kids in Nigeria that cannot go to school again because we cannot send their school fee.
Tired of enduring in silence, this group of affected persons has come to the Nigerian embassy seeking answers.
We cannot stand it anymore. Some people are not be able to pay house rent, like me. I'm staying outside, all because I don't want to stay it outside. I'm keeping myself. All because I want to stay in Lagos. I look for money from one place to another. I even borrow money from Nigerian to pay for my visa change so I can be able to stay legal in this country.
Yeah, they're nonchalant about everything. So.
A few of them gain access and return almost 2 hours later.
He actually gave some breakdown, and they accepted the fact that there has been no proper communication to the public.
While work permit restrictions were first recorded in June and attributed to criminal activities by some Nigerians, many believe this situation is as a result of the flight ban in place since February.
If that is not fixed, in my opinion, I think this work permit will just continue to be a diplomatic way to get back to the Nigerian government. Should discuss and come to a conclusion. That's my opinion.
An embassy official who won't speak on camera says they continue to engage their UAE counterpart on the matter. Last week, Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyema, met with the UAE ambassador to Nigeria, Dr. Fahad Al-Tafaq. A post by the embassy on Instagram says several bilateral and multilateral matters of mutual interest were discussed. Expectations are that the work permit is top on every agenda, as these Nigerians hope to return to gainful employment as soon as possible. Maya Wadegoke, Channels Television News.
We end the program on a really cheery note. 16-month-old Cameroonian twins who were born conjoined at the spine and hips have been separated after undergoing a 27-hour-long surgery in Turkey. Mary and Elizabeth Akwe were brought to Turkey for surgery when they were just 9 months old. After 7 months of research and preparation, the babies were separated in a successful surgery that was planned on 3D models. And their mother, Carolina Akwe, said she was very happy to have her babies as individuals.
When I give birth, they brought the children to me. They first of all hide it from me. It was after that they told me that the baby they were joined. So when they told me, I was shocked. But after I just leave everything in the hands of God. When they were being separated, I saw my 2 babies. I was very happy. I was very, very happy for seeing Elizabeth and Mary being separated well without any complication. So I was very happy.
Everything has been planned by God. Because man wishes, but God wishes best for us. And my wish for them is to become medical doctors. To become medical doctors. That's my wish for them.
It's a really touching story. Well, doctors say that Mary has begun to sing and crawl after surgery, and Elizabeth has begun to dance and speak, as we heard them trying to speak into the microphone there. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani.